Hey guys, Andy here with Greenbelt Academy, and I'm so excited for today's video where I'm going to share with you 13 tips that you can use to help you prepare for the Greenbelt exam. I know that going on that Greenbelt journey can be difficult, it can be stressful, there's a lot of uncertainty, and these 13 tips will help you plan and study and take the test and be effective and help you prepare for the Greenbelt exam. All right, let's head over to the computer and get started. All right, let's jump into today's lecture. So remember, like I said, today's topic, what you're going to learn are 13 tips to help you prepare for and pass the Greenbelt exam. I say Greenbelt exam, but these same tips would apply for the CQ exam or the Black Belt exam or the CQA exam, whatever test you're preparing for, these same tips will apply. And let's jump into them. By the way, before I go through all 13, I want to help you understand the big picture. So there's 13 tips. The first 6 tips are all about planning tips, things that you should do before you ever start studying to set yourself up for success. And by the way, I'm going to share with you 4 categories of tips, and they follow the plan, do, check, act cycle that Deming and Schuhart taught us. And like they taught us, everything starts with a plan. You have to have a plan. Once you have a plan, it's time to execute that plan. Once you have a study plan or whatever, it's time to actually do the studying. And so I want to give you 3 specific tips to help you study effectively. What are some things that you can incorporate into your study practice to make sure that you're actually learning the material and that you'll actually be successful on exam day? And then the next 2 tips are all about the exam day. You've planned, you've studied, and now it's time to check and see if your studying paid off, if you've learned everything you need to know. And so there's 2 specific tips I want to give you about the exam day experience itself to, again, help you be successful on the exam. And then the next is the act phase. Once you've checked your results, what do? Do we put it into action, or do we adjust the plan and go through it again? So I want to give you 2 specific tips on things I think you should do after the exam so that you continue learning and continue growing. Okay, let's go and get started. So tip number 1 is to make sure that you're eligible for the exam. Before you go on this journey and spend all this time, invest all this energy in the study process, you want to make sure you're eligible. The minimum requirement is 3 years of on-the-job experience. I'm not going to go through this in detail. In fact, I've put together an entire separate video that I'll link in the description below, where I walk through the details of the requirements, the educational waivers, and then I talk about the Greenbelt body of knowledge specifically and help you understand if your experience fits into the body of knowledge. So if you're worried about eligibility, definitely check out that other video I created. But that's tip number 1, make sure you're eligible. Once you've confirmed eligibility, it's time to determine what you need to learn, right? And remember, these tips are all about creating a study plan. And so essentially what we're doing is what we call in continuous improvement, a gap analysis. Where are you today, and where do you need to be in the future to pass the Greenbelt exam? Now, to do this gap analysis, ASQ gives us this really helpful tool called the body of knowledge. In fact, I'll link this in the description below. This body of knowledge tells you everything that's going to be covered on the exam. All the topics and concepts and terms and definitions that you need to know to be successful on exam day are captured in the body of knowledge. And so that's a big part of tip number 2 is to read the body of knowledge and think about what you do know well and what you don't know well. And then we're going to take that gap and we're going to create a study plan that essentially helps us close that gap. Now, when you're reading the body of knowledge, there's some things I think you should pay attention to. So when you're reading it, what you'll notice here is at the end of every term, or at the end of every, chapter, you're going to see these little words here in brackets, okay? This is called Bloom's taxonomy. And so essentially what ASQ has done is they've defined the depth of knowledge that you have to essentially be successful on the exam. So some terms or some concepts like statistical distributions, you really just have to understand them, okay? And you can see the pyramid here. And as we go up the pyramid, your depth of understanding has to increase, right? So remember is the baseline level. You have to remember a term or understand a concept. But as we go up the pyramid, you have to be able to apply concepts, analyze data, evaluate situations, or create tools or create project management charts, things like that. And so as you go through the body of knowledge, look at these terms because it essentially is an indicator as to where you need to spend time and how well you have to understand each particular topic. The other watch out here that I like to tell people is, there is some statistics on the Greenbelt exam. So I've listed out a bunch of topics throughout the body of knowledge that include statistics because this is probably the number one area that worries people the most. And so when you're putting together a study plan, and by focusing on those gaps, those topics that you don't know, that's going to help you be successful on exam day. The other tip I love to give people here is that, before we round out this gap analysis, you can validate this with a practice exam. So I've got a bunch of practice exams. I'll link them in the description below. You can download them for free. And essentially, these practice exams help you validate your analysis by confirming whether or not you truly understand a topic or another. And so again, this can really help you validate that gap analysis with a little bit of a practice exam. I love that tip for people who are putting together a study plan. The other tip that I love to give people here when creating a study plan is to think about time, okay? Because remember, our goal is to identify that study gap and then essentially use our time. We're going to invest our time to close that gap. And so to close that gap, it's going to require you to invest your time. So some things I think you should consider when thinking about how much time you can invest every single day is your schedule and your prior commitments. What are some things, some other maybe work commitments or personal commitments or scheduling conflicts that you've committed to that might limit how much time you can invest in the study process? And generally, people always ask me, how much time should they spend studying? What I generally recommend is 30 minutes a day. And I do that for two reasons. I think it's, number one, I think it's reasonable. I think most people can find 30 minutes in their day. And number two is I think it's sufficient. 15 minutes is too short, an hour is maybe too long. 30 minutes is that right amount of time where you can really focus, dive in, learn a new topic, take a practice exam, and truly go deep on a topic in a short period of time. I think 30 minutes is perfect and reasonable and sufficient. So that's usually what I recommend. If you can invest more time in the process, you can go through the journey faster. And of course, if you only have something like 20 minutes or 15 minutes, that just means that the journey is going to take you a little bit longer than your peers. And so tip number 4, right, once you have your gap analysis and you've thought about time, is to create a study plan. This is what it's all about. I love this quote from Benjamin Franklin. If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And so creating a study plan, I think, is one thing that all my successful students do, is they have some sort of plan. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into this because I've already created an entire video, which I'll link below in the description, on how to create an epic study plan for the Green Belt exam. Again, that same video applies to the Black Belt exam or the CQ exam, but definitely check that out because I go into a bunch of tips on how to actually create a study plan. Essentially, I start high level, right? Which pillars do I want to focus on? How many questions are on the exam? How many study sessions do I expect to have to invest into that particular topic? And then how many weeks of study will be involved in each particular pillar? And I go even deeper. I go topic by topic within each pillar. How much time am I going to spend on each particular topic? And I would encourage you to do this too, because again, having a plan is critical to being successful. And so again, here's kind of the logic, right? Do your gap assessment. Think about how much time you can invest daily and combine those two pieces of information into a study plan. What topics am I going to cover on one particular day, and how long is it going to take me to go through the entire study journey? And then the next tip is tip number 5 here, align with the boss. I love that term boss, by the way, because we all have a boss at work, but we also often have a boss in our personal lives. This could be your spouse or your significant other. Now, the reason I give you this tip is 2 reasons. Number 1, it gives you permission to dedicate time. You want 30 minutes every single day, either at work or at home, to invest in the study journey. And by aligning with your spouse or your boss, what you're essentially asking for is permission to dedicate time. A lot of my students, they want to go through the journey, but oftentimes they don't go through with their study sessions because either they have work stuff come up or they have stuff come up in their personal lives, and they don't feel like they have the permission to dedicate time. So definitely align with your spouse or your boss on the study journey. The other reason that this is a great tip is its motivation to succeed. When you share a goal with a loved one or somebody you respect or a boss, essentially you're committing yourself even deeper to being successful. And that's going to provide you with a lot of motivation to actually stick with your study plan and actually go through the process and actually get certified. It's a great motivational tool to keep you on that journey when the studying gets tough. That's number 5. Number 6 is pick an exam date. I love this tip. This tip is so underrated. Once you have a study plan, you should think about, okay, it's going to take me 4 months to study. You should pick an exam date. I sometimes have students who commit to the journey, they get started, and then they start missing study dates and they start letting their schedule slip. And because they don't have an exam date on the books, their study journey just kind of continues to slip, month in and month out. And so a tip that every student, all of my successful students tell me, once they picked an exam date, it got real and the studying really kicked in once they have an exam date. And here's the tip. Here's what I usually like to tell people. Take your study plan. So let's say, for example, you think it's going to take you 4 months. Take that 4-month schedule, add an additional 2 months to it, and then pick an exam date that's, let's say, 6 months out in the future. The reason I add an extra 2 months is because life happens. You get sick, your kids get sick, you go on vacation, you get audited at work, something happens and you miss a study date. It happens to everybody. And so you want to create a little bit of buffer in your plan to account for the uncertainty or the variation that happens in everybody's natural life. And so again, give yourself an extra 2 months. If you get through your study journey in the 4-month period that you planned, that's fantastic. That gives you an extra 2 months to refresh and continue practicing and taking practice exams to just make sure you're even more prepared on exam day. So again, get an exam date on the calendar. It'll make it real, and it's a great motivational tool. I highly recommend this. Most people don't do this, but again, I highly recommend it. I think it's something all successful students do. Okay, tips 7 through 9. So now we have a plan. We just left the planning phase. You've thought about time. You've done your gap analysis. You've got a great plan on paper. It's time to work that plan. It's time to study. And so tip number 7, and this is the first tip, is to intentionally build a daily study habit. This is the thing that made the most impact for me professionally and personally, is to create a study habit. There's all sorts of quotes here I want to share with you. John Maxwell is one of my favorite authors, said, "You'll never change your life until you change something you do daily." The secret of success is found in your daily habits. If you want to be successful on the Green Belt exam or the Black Belt exam or the CQ exam or anything, you have to create a daily study habit. I used to wake up at 5 a.m., sit down with my cup of coffee, read and watch videos and take practice exams. It made a huge difference in my life and in my career. I absolutely love this tip, and I can't recommend it enough. My most successful students create a daily study habit, and then the habit is what carries them through the study journey, because the studying will get hard. Your initial motivation is going to fade. I promise it's going to fade. And what's going to get you across the finish line is that study habit. John Dryden said, "We first make our habits, and then our habits make us." And I love this quote because it speaks to an intentionality. Make your habits, and then let your habits make you. I love that quote. And finally, motivation is what gets you started. If you're watching this video, you've probably committed to the Greenbelt journey, or you're thinking about it, and you're probably feeling insanely motivated. Everybody feels motivated on day one. Eventually, that motivation is going to fade. And what's going to get you across the finish line and get you certified and help you grow your career is a daily study habit. I cannot stress this enough. Habits are incredibly important. I'm a huge fan. Think about your habit. It's going to be the same time, the same place every single day. Sit down and have a study routine that you go through, and eventually that habit will carry you across the finish line. Now, in terms of your daily habits, what are some things that you should be doing as part of your daily habit that will help you actually learn the material that you're studying? This is tip number 8, and this is to take a practice exam, okay? So, over here on the left is an example of the practice exams that I have in my course, the Greenbelt Masterclass. It comes with the practice exams, and it comes with the solutions. Part of the value of a practice exam is to struggle, to read a question, to feel that angst of unfamiliarity, and to really try to recall something from memory. Okay, what did I just learn? What do I do here? What topics do I use? What are the factors? If I'm calculating a control limit for a control chart, which factor do I use and what equation do I use? Let yourself struggle a little bit, because this is where the learning really takes place. In fact, the research is clear. And I did a whole video of this. I'll link it in the description below, about the benefits of what researchers call active retrieval or active recall. This is essentially taking a practice exam, and here's what the research says. The neural pathways in your brain that are associated with both memory and understanding, those are two different things. To understand something and to remember it are two different things. Both of those neural pathways get stronger. Oh, and this is based on hundreds of years of research. Hundreds of different experiments have all demonstrated the same effect. Those neural pathways associated with memory and understanding get stronger when memory is retrieved. Okay, this is called active retrieval. So watching a video or reading a book is passive learning. You're putting information into your brain. But when you retrieve that information from memory by taking a practice exam or using flashcards or writing things down on paper, essentially that's retrieving memory, and that's what strengthens the neural pathways associated with remembering something and understanding it. Again, I've got a whole video that goes in depth on the research if you want to learn more about this. Practice exams, if you want to be successful on the real Greenbelt exam, or if you want to be successful using these tools in life, in practice, take a practice exam. It's so incredibly important. Make sure that every single day when you're studying, you take a practice exam. It's so incredibly important. Tip number 9 is to space out your study. Again, I have a whole separate video on this where I break down these two options. Let's say I gave you two options. You could either sit down and study for 2.5 hours, 150 minutes, or you could space those 30-minute study sessions out over the course of 5 days. If you did an experiment like this and measured retention and learning, which of these options would be more effective? It's not even close. Spacing out your study or you're spacing out your practice over time is way better than trying to cram it all into one study session. Again, I've got a whole video on this. The research is totally clear. When you're creating that study plan, you want to make sure you're studying 4 or 5 days a week for at least 30 minutes a day. And that's what helps you, first of all, create a habit and space out your study, and it's going to help you learn it and remember it and be successful on the exam. Again, I've got a whole video on this. I'll link it in the description below, all about spaced practice and why it's important for you to be studying 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. That's tip number 9. Tip number 10 and 11 is all about the exam. So we've created a study plan, we've worked our plan, we've created a habit, we're taking practice exams, we're learning the material, and finally it's exam day. And what are some things you can do on the exam to help you be successful? Tip number 10, right? This is how to be successful in the actual exam, is to prepare your study resource. So when you sign up for my course, The Greenbelt Masterclass, you get a hard copy book. It's called the Exam Day Guide. And what I recommend all my students do is to take that resource and prepare it for the exam. So the Greenbelt Body of Knowledge has 6 major pillars: overview, define, measure, analyze, improve, control. And what I recommend people do is I recommend you go out and you buy Post-it notes. Usually I tell people to get 3 different colors: blue, yellow, and pink, and essentially mark each chapter in your book with a different color Post-it note. That way you can quickly flip to the right page. One thing that's critical on the Greenbelt exam or Black Belt exam or CQ exam is time management. You only have a certain amount of time to answer all the questions on the exam. And so you have to know your resource in and out. You have to be able to quickly flip to the right page and confirm that, yes, this is in fact the right answer, or look up the right equation. Time management is key. And one of the best ways to do that is to go into the exam with a prepared resource. And so again, what I encourage all my students to do is, for example, in the overview section, there are 3 chapters: Six Sigma, Lean Principles, Design for Six Sigma. Those are all in blue. They go in the book. The next pillar, which is the define pillar, has 6 chapters, chapters 4 through 9. That's a different color Post-it note. They go in the book. And then the same thing, we go into the measure pillar. There's 6 chapters. I encourage you to essentially use the pink Post-it notes to write down each chapter and the chapter name so that you can quickly find the right chapter on the exam. Now, for those Post-it notes specifically, not only do I recommend you write down the chapter, but also what I like to do is write down major topics included in that chapter. So let's say you get a question about cost to poor quality. I can quickly flip here to chapter 8 and confirm that, yes, cost to poor quality is covered here in chapter 8. I'm in the right chapter, and then all I have to do is flip a few more pages to find the right topic. Same thing with chapter 2. Lean Principles. There are more than one chapter in the Greenbelt Body of Knowledge that covers lean principles. And so if I get a question about waste or value streams or whatever, I want to flip here to chapter 2 and just be able to quickly look at this Post-it note and go, okay, waste is covered in this chapter. I'm in the right chapter. I'm close. I just need to keep flipping. And then same thing, for every chapter in the book, I recommend you have a Post-it note and then write down, again, major topics included in that chapter so that, again, you're managing your time wisely, you're flipping to the right pages, and you're able to look things up quickly and save yourself time on the exam. It's super important. The other tip I love to give people is to Flag questions for time management. So most ASQ exams are proctored by a company called Prometrics. And so Prometrics gives you the exam on a computer. It's a computer-based exam. Here's exactly what the exam looks like. And in fact, this is a demo that comes from the Prometrics website. I can link to this in the description below. And so I want to point out a few things about the software itself that you need to be familiar with to help you be successful on the exam. So over here in the top left-hand corner, I want to draw your attention over here to 1 through 9, okay? Because on the Greenbelt exam, there's 100 questions. And so you're going to see over here 1 through 100. And so I want to help you understand what the gray and the green and the flag means, because you can use the software to help you be successful on the exam. Gray, if you see a question in gray, that means you've answered the question. You've made a selection and you've hit the next button. You've answered the question. Green means you skip that question without answering it, okay? And that's really nice because it's a visual way to tell. If you scroll through this list of 100 questions, you can see how many of them you have and have not answered. The other tool that I absolutely love that I tell everybody to use is this little flag button down here. So sometimes if you read a question and you're not sure of what the answer is, the worst mistake you can make is to sit there and ruminate and think and flip through your book, and it's a huge waste of time. What I recommend you do, flag the question, read the question really well, flag it, and then go on to the next question. The reason that's such a good piece of advice is because first of all, it helps you get through the exam faster, and that makes sure that you answer every single question. It also allows your mind to kind of consider a question in the background. So you might read a question and not know the answer, and then 3 questions later, you might see a trigger word, or you might just think of something off the top of your head and go, oh, I remember the answer to that question. You can go back to that flagged question and answer it. The other reason that this is a good strategy is because once you get through the exam, the Prometrics software has a lot of great filtering tools. You can filter for answered questions, flagged and answered questions, flagged and unanswered questions, unanswered questions that weren't flagged. There's all sorts of ways to filter these questions to make sure that you've answered them all or that you can come back to them. So definitely take advantage of the software, flag the questions you don't know about, get through the exam, and then go back and with whatever time you have remaining, go through the questions that you haven't answered and then finalize all those questions before you hit the submit button. Okay, now we're on to the final 2 tips. Tips 12 and 13. What are some things that you should do after you take the exam? After, right, you've finished the exam, pass or fail, what are 2 things I think everyone should do? Tip number 12 is to use what you're learning. Oh my gosh, I cannot stress this enough. This is so incredibly important. In fact, this tip is misplaced. You should start using what you're learning while you're learning it. But well before you ever take the exam, start applying the knowledge that you're using from the study journey. It gives you context. For humans, for adult humans to learn something, we have to understand context. When to use a tool, how to use a tool, why to use a tool. All those things are really important to truly conceptualizing and understanding a topic. I want to drive this home. I love this quote from Benjamin Franklin. Tell me and I'll forget. Teach me and I'll remember. Involve me and I'll learn. Using a tool, putting it into practice is the best way to learn something. You should be trying to apply what you're learning while you're learning it so that you really understand it, and that will lead to mastery. If you want to be an expert, if you want to be competent and a go-to person and an expert at continuous improvement, you have to use the tools that you're learning about. I love this quote too, right? Because this drives the whole point home. Knowledge without action is meaningless. I've had students get the CQE certification or the Greenbelt certification, and then they never apply the knowledge that they just learned. And essentially that means that they've wasted their time and the whole process was meaningless. The whole point of learning something new is to put it into action, and what that leads to is it leads to career growth, right? That's what we're all here for. We want to grow ourselves so that we can grow our career. In fact, this is a quote I used to tell people all the time at work. Your career will only grow when you grow. And the only way for that to happen is for you to learn something new and put it into practice. And then you're going to be able to grow yourself and grow your career. And that, at the end of the day, is what it's all about. And then finally, the last tip is to plan your next target condition. If you believe in continuous improvement, you should believe in personal development, right? You believe in the power of growth and continuous improvement. And this idea of a next target condition is a really common phrase in continuous improvement. Yes, you've made an improvement. Yes, you've grown yourself and you've learned a set of tools. What's the next thing you're going to learn? What's the next target condition that you're going to focus on? Is it quality engineering? Is it a black belt? Is it the if you want to go into leadership, is it the manager of quality and organizational excellence? Think about what you want to study next and stay on that journey of continuous improvement and continuous personal development. You know, I think that's the best tip I can give you, is to become a lifelong learner, continue learning and continue growing, and your career will absolutely grow. Those are all 13 tips. Create a study plan. Study effectively by using practice exams and spacing out your exam. And then tips 10 and 11 is all about the exam day. Have your resource ready, use the software. And then 12 and 13, remember, use what you're learning and think about the next target condition. What are you going to do next? By the way, if you want to go on that Greenbelt journey and you want to learn more, I have a bunch of free resources over on my website, Greenbelt Academy. Study plans, practice exams, free courses. In fact, I have a fantastic free course that covers the top 10 topics on the Greenbelt exam. If you're worried about statistics, for example, we cover a lot of statistics topics. I've got video lectures, practice exams, downloadable content that you can bring into the exam, a whole bunch of stuff. Head over to greenbeltacademy.com/free course. And again, if you love this video, you like this video, do me a favor, hit that like button so other people just like you can find it. And if you really are dedicated to that Greenbelt journey, hit that subscribe button. That way, as I publish new videos every single week, you get notified. You can stay on that journey and grow with me, and we will get you certified. All right, that's it for me. I hope you loved it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much. Bye.